What's up, YouTube? It's Oz again. So I wanted to make the video today that I wish someone else would have made when I was researching all of this solar stuff. Alright? I've tried to make this video several times, and we're going to try it again, and I'm going to keep trying until I get it right, alright? So, if you're just finding this channel, I've just started saving towards van life, but I've been researching all this stuff for a long time, and I've got a lot of knowledge about solar and stuff like that I want to share while I'm saving and getting ready. And so I want to try to make this video for you about solar. And if you enjoy it, please hit the like button on this video to help push it out to more people, and subscribe to the channel. Follow me on my journey and help me start to build a community here and get ready for my journey in the van life. So solar is a subject that is really pretty simple, that seems really complicated. And I had to watch a whole lot of videos to kind of really for it to start coming together for me in my head. I mean, I'm a smart guy, but I'm not real great at math and stuff, and some of the way some of these people explain it make it pretty fucking complicated sounding. And it's really not that complicated, all right? There are just some basic concepts that you need to understand, and you need to understand how those concepts work with each other and why they're important. And I'm going to try to put that forward in this video. So try not to get confused. Go back and watch the video more than once, and you'll start to understand how simple all this stuff really is once you have these basic concepts down, okay? So here are the basic concepts, all right? 1, watts are a measurement of time. They're not just a measurement of electricity. Watts are also a measurement of time. So if you have an air conditioner that uses 400 watts, it uses 400 watts per hour. If you have a microwave that uses 1500 watts, it uses 1500 watts per hour. So these are measurements based on time and electricity. And once you really understand that, it makes all of this much simpler, okay? Another concept that you need to understand: amps times volts equals watts. Okay, if you know that basic calculation, you can figure the vast majority of this stuff out, okay? Amps times volts equals watts. The batteries that we work with solar are amp hours. They're measured in amp hours. So a 100 amp hour battery, that is a 12 volt battery, has 1200 amp hours. It has 1200 watt hours, okay? So it has 1200 watts, and watts is a measurement of time. So if you have something that uses 400 watts, you can run that on a 1200 watt hour battery for 4 hours, okay? It uses 400 watts per hour. You have 1200 watt hours in the battery, so you can therefore run it for 3 hours on that battery. So amps times volts equals watts, and watts are also a measurement of time. Now, the third concept is series versus parallel. This describes the way that you will wire batteries together to create a battery bank, or the way that you will wire solar panels together to create a solar array. You will either wire them in series or in parallel, or in a combination of series and parallel. When you wire two batteries in series, let me back up. When you wire things in series, you affect the voltage, but not the amps. When you wire things together in parallel, you affect the amps, but not the voltage, okay? So if you take two 12 volt batteries that are 100 amp hours, okay, and we've determined that that's 1200 watt hours, okay? If you take these two 12 volt batteries that are 100 amp hours and you wire them together in series, You're affecting the voltage. So 12 plus 12 is 24. So now instead of having two 12-volt batteries, you have one 24-volt battery. But you have not affected the amps. So it is still 100 amp hours. But it doubles because it's 24 volts. So two 12-volt batteries that are 1200 watt hours each wired in series, you now have one 24-volt battery that is 2400 watt hours. So it's 100 amp hours still, but now it's 24 volts, okay? If you take those two 12-volt batteries and you wire them together in parallel, you affect the amps, but the volts stay the same. So now you have a 12-volt battery that is 200 amp hours, and that is also 2400 watt hours. So you still get the same amount of watt hours, but we'll go into why you would want to do this later, all right? Now, solar panels. If you wire four 50-volt solar panels that are 10 amps together in series, then you have created a solar array that outputs 200 volts, but is still 10 amps, okay? 50 times 4 solar panels. If you wire them in series, the volts add up to 200 and the amps stay the same, so it's 10 amps. If you take those same 4 solar panels and you wire them in parallel, you have a 50-volt array because the volts don't change, that is 40 amps. But you still have the same amount of power because amps times volts equals watts, okay? And I'll explain why you would want to do that in a moment. So, just to go back for a second, watts are a measurement of time. Watts mean hours. So if 1200 watt microwave uses that much power in an hour, 100 watt refrigerator uses that much power in an hour. Okay? Series versus parallel. If you wire something in series, you add the volts together and the amps stay the same. If you wire something in parallel, the volts stay the same, but the amps add together. Okay? Amps times volts equals watts. Now, why would we need to know this? Why do we need to figure this stuff out? Okay? Well, when you buy a solar charge controller, there are going to be several different types of them. Okay? You're going to have some like the Victrons that you can wire in 12 or 24 volt. They'll accept whatever you throw at it, and it will do all the calculations inside. Okay? Now this charge controller is going to say, like if it's a Victron, it'll say it's a 100/40. That means that the maximum volts you can feed into it is 100, and the maximum amps that you can feed into it is 30. Okay, 30? Did I say 40? Let's say 30. Okay. So if it's a 100/30, then that means the most voltage you can put into it is 100, and the most amps you can put into it is 30. Okay. So, but it'll do 12 or 24 volt. Okay. So when you look at this, it'll say that you can only hook 1200 watts of solar up to it, okay, or however many that charge controller accepts. However, that's in a 12 volt system. If you are hooking a 24 volt battery to the same one, then you can hook 2400 watts of panels to it. So this is why you need to make this decision on your battery bank. Because most charge controllers that accept 12 and 24 volts, the number of watts of panels you can hook to it doubles when you move to a 24 volt system. Okay, so now beyond that, we look at this charge controller will accept 100 volts and 30 amps. Okay, now when you buy your solar panels, they will tell you what the volts open circuit is. That's a VOC is what that will be marked. and it will tell you how many amps each panel is. All right. So if you have these same 4 50-volt 10 amp panels, okay, you cannot hook all those panels up in series, because the volts will be 200 volts and your charge controller only accepts 100 volts. Similarly, you cannot hook all those solar panels in parallel, because the charge controller accepts 30 amps, and those 10 amp panels wired together in parallel will only be 50 volts, but they will be 40 amps, and so your charge controller will not handle that. So but you can hook these panels up if you understand series and parallel. What you would do is you would take 2 of those panels and wire them together in series, and now those 2 50-volt panels output 100 volts and 10 amps, because the amps doesn't change. And then you wire the other 2 in series, and then that gives you another 100 volts and 10 amps. Then you take those 2 series strings and you wire those 2 together in parallel, which affects the amps and not the volts. And now you have all 4 of these panels together that output 100 volts and 20 amps. So now you can take these solar panels and you can hook them to your charge controller. However, these are 500 watt panels, because 10 amps times 50 volts is 500 watts, okay? So that's 2,000 watts of panels. But your charge controller says that the maximum you can put in it is 1,200 watts, okay? But that's on a 12 volt system. So if you then go back and you start off with a battery bank that you wired in series to create a 24 volt system, now you can put all those panels onto this charge controller. So this is the way that you play with things in order to make them match your charge controller. Now you have to research the charge controller as well to make sure that you have enough capacity in it to do what you want to do. But that's why you need to know this information, and that's how you bring it all together to create a system. And I know that this seems like a lot, but really it's not complicated. And if you go back and you watch this multiple times and write this stuff down, you'll very quickly figure out that it's not complicated. Now, another thing that I want to talk about, which is another basic concept that you need to understand to be able to do this stuff, I apologize for the noise, is watts being a measurement of time, okay? Now this is easy when you're thinking about devices that you're going to run for hours a day, okay? Because watts are hours. So if something uses 100 watts and you're going to run it for many hours, then all you have to do is 100 watts an hour, and you'll figure it out, right? However, for things like microwaves and coffee makers and stuff like that, we have to break it down further than that, and people think that's very complicated, but it's not. Your brain thinks 1,500 watt microwave, that's a lot. That's a lot of energy. But you're only going to run that microwave for maybe 10 minutes a day. You know what I mean? So the way you do this calculation is super simple. There are 60 minutes in an hour, and that wattage is a measurement of an hour. So if it's a 1,500 watt microwave, you just divide 1,500 by 60 minutes in an hour, 1,500 divided by 60, and that tells you how many watts that thing uses every minute. And so for something that you're not using very much in a day, you divide that number by 60, and then you just add up how many minutes you're going to use in the day, and there you go. And you use these types of calculations to figure out how big your battery bank needs to be. Because another thing that you need to understand is, no matter how you charge the batteries, everything that you do comes off of the batteries. So it's very important that you size the battery bank big enough so that you can make it through however long you need to make it through, if it rains or something like that. If you calculate that you're going to use 3,000 watts a day, then you need a battery bank that will support at least that 3,000 watts. Okay? It's better to double that, because what happens if there's no sun one day and you still got to make it through the next day? You know what I mean? It's better to oversize that battery bank so that in situations when it's rainy or cloudy or you're not getting very much sun for whatever reason, you can still make it through that next day. This is something that I think is often overlooked. You need a robust system that allows you to make it through even if it's rainy, even if it's cloudy. You know, to get through those couple of days, maybe 3 days if you can get a battery bank that big, you know. And then you start thinking about how to charge it. And there are multiple different ways to charge it. Solar, you can charge it off your alternator. You know, solar is the better bet in my opinion. And the truth is that you really only need enough solar to charge back the amount of energy that you use in a single day. Okay, now it's better if you can get it bigger than that, because that way, like if you have to have a day with no sun, you can still charge back up pretty good in a full day of sun. But if you have enough solar panels to charge back up what you use in a single day, and then your battery bank's big enough to carry you for an extra day, then you may have to conserve for a couple of days to build your power bank back up to maximum. But as long as you can charge up enough to get you through a day, a 24-hour period, you're going to be able to make it work. I probably went a little too far with that last part, but I just want you to have an idea of the basic concepts that allow you to put together a solar system. It's really not that difficult if you just learn these few basic concepts and put them into action. I hope that was helpful. If so, please subscribe to the channel, because I've got more, and follow me along on the journey toward van life, on the road to van life. Hit that subscribe button, like the video, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.